Hello and welcome to Better Than Ever Live. My name is Dr. David Geier. Wherever you're watching, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, whatever part of the country, whatever part of the world, or wherever you're listening, hope you're making today and every day your masterpiece. My name is Dr. David Geier, double board certified orthopedic surgeon, sports medicine specialist, and media medical expert. I help you feel and perform your best regardless of age, injuries, or medical conditions. Very excited to be here today on this Thursday afternoon in November. Hope you're having a great fall so far as we get closer to the winter months. I hope you have recovered from the hangover of daylight savings time and the getting dark earlier and all of that. I hope you're doing well with that. I talked recently about that study that said canceling daylight savings time would be bad for our health. I am still skeptical of that, quite honestly. Nobody has gotten to me and convinced me otherwise, but for what it's worth, I would love, if you're watching this live, I would love, like Robert is, I'd love for you to say hi, tell us where you are, and feel free to comment on what we're talking about on this show. If you're listening to this as a podcast, Better Than Ever Live podcast, you can get that wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to YouTube or Facebook or LinkedIn and watch us live so you can comment as well. Remember, as always, this is meant for general information and educational purposes only. This is not specific medical advice. I'm not your doctor. You're not my patient. You're welcome to come see me in Charleston as a patient. You're welcome to come see me in Charlotte, North Carolina as a patient. I do all sorts of cool things to help people get over bone and joint injuries without surgery. But that's not what I'm here to promote, and I'm not giving you medical advice. I can give you medical advice in the practice, can't do it here. But all sorts of good stuff to get to today. I wanted to start, speaking of Robert, I wanted to start with something that he asked me in an Ask Dr. Geier live video a couple weeks ago about statins and testosterone. So I've sort of talked about this a little bit. I'm going to get to the bottom of it. There was a study, it's actually an older study, 2010. So for those of you who don't know, statin drugs are used to treat high cholesterol. Apparently, 1 in every 6 adults here in the United States has high cholesterol, and a big percentage of them, at least the ones that are being treated by doctors, are on a statin drug. Usually it's Lipitor or Zocor. And there has been concern that maybe, as Robert pointed out, 10 or so days ago, does that lead to lower testosterone? Well, there's a study done out of the University of Florence where they looked at people that presented to a primary care clinic complaining of erectile dysfunction. There was almost 3,500 men in this study, about 51 years old on average, that came into the clinic complaining of erectile dysfunction. About 7% of those people, of those men, were on statins. And then they did all sorts of blood work looking at free testosterone, unbound testosterone, total testosterone. And what they found out is that the men that were on statins, their testosterone levels tended to be about twice as low as the people that weren't. Now, that is not cause and effect. A better way to do this, and there may be other studies that did this, you take 100,000, whatever the number is, people just starting statins, get blood work looking at their testosterone levels before and then after. Maybe you get a control group to compare it to and see what that does. But this does at least suggest a link. So if you are starting a statin drug for high cholesterol, good idea to kind of keep an eye on not just lab work for testosterone, that's always a good thing, but probably more importantly, pay attention for signs and symptoms of low testosterone. And some of those you may not be surprised about. Reduced sex drive, obviously, is probably the most famous symptom of low testosterone. Decreased athletic performance, part of the reason athletes as they get older start taking these types of medications, performance-enhancing drugs in some people's opinions, but it's more than that. This study also suggests that if you switch from being upbeat and happy to being more grumpy, that could be a sign of testosterone deficiency. Or get this, I love this. If you tend to fall asleep after meals now when you didn't in the past, that could be low testosterone as well. I know people that fall asleep pretty much after every meal. Doesn't matter what time of day they eat. I should have them get blood work. I don't know. But that is something to know. If you're on statins, make sure your doctor, at least talk to your doctor about following regular hormone panels every 3 months or 6 months or something like that, because that interferes with your quality of life and just from an energy standpoint, sex drive, athletic, sports and exercise performance, having your hormones optimized is a very important part of your health. All right, we know that food can be linked to heart disease. Cardiovascular disease, #1 killer in the United States. And if you eat fried foods, fatty foods that are, processed, ultra-processed foods or fast foods, if you eat tons of sugar, we all know that that's not really good for you. But a new study, this is fascinating, and this got a lot of attention. I saw this all over the internet. New study published in the journal Menopause, which is the journal of the North American Menopause Society, says that how you eat may be involved in your risk of cardiovascular disease. What they did is they took almost 600 postmenopausal women aged 65 and older, and what they found is that eating alone increases your risk of heart disease. Specifically, women that ate 2 or more meals a day. These are women 65 and older. Women who ate 2 or more meals a day alone, 2.58 times more likely to develop angina or angina, chest pain caused by lack of blood flow to the heart. Over 2.5 times more likely to develop that than women who ate 2 or more meals a day with other people. Now, why is that? Could be loneliness. No question, that could be part of it. But what they also found is that the women that tended to eat alone basically ate worse foods. Less fiber, less potassium and sodium. They weren't aware of food labels, didn't use the food labels. So it wasn't just the loneliness. Now, this matters because in the United States, women tend to outlive men. On average, they live many years longer than men do. So by the time they get to 65, 70, 75, very likely their husband might have passed away, or any variety of things, but they may be alone. And so finding ways to get women to spend meals with each other, have more of a social network, might not just be good for their overall health, but definitely their nutritional health as well. Thanks, Joy. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I think this is fascinating for sure. And that could have been the first one I did on the testosterone and not the eating alone. But just think about that. Now, having said that, eating alone in and of itself is not necessarily bad. They're not saying that it's that. It's just pay attention to eating quality foods, maybe not so much of the ultra-processed foods. And if you can spend time with other people, that's a good thing. I've mentioned this book 100 times, it feels like, on this show. And I've got some issues with some of the stuff that it promotes. But if you have a chance to read Blue Zones by Dan Buettner, where he looks at I think there's 7 or 8 pockets of the world, parts of the world, where people very frequently live to 100 years old, way more than other parts of the world. And the only one in the United States was Loma Linda, California. But that was a common theme, is that the people, as they got into their 80s, 90s, and past 100, still spent time with families, still spent time with friends. They sit on the front porch and talk to people in their neighborhoods, and being social, definitely a good thing. All right, speaking of that, study with Duke and Harvard researchers wanted to answer the question, what are the overall lifestyle factors, nutritional factors that can help you live longer? And they sort of analyzed studies supporting all these different things out there, certain ways to eat, certain foods to eat, ways to exercise, and what actually can help you live longer. And this is just we've sort of touched on almost all of these indirectly, but let me kind of give you what they found. One, certain types of nutrition were good, and not just because it's not saturated fat, the fatty foods, ultra-processed foods, but specifically that if 50% of the protein you eat comes from plant and even fatty fish sources, maybe not so much the red meat and that type of animal fat, it stimulates hormones that activate genes that delay the aging of your cells. So that, back to that whole Mediterranean diet, may potentially be a good thing for you. Also, fasting, very good for you. And we're going to do a whole video sometime about fasting, because I'm a big believer in it for all kinds of reasons. But fasting could be good. But whether or not it's outright fasting, 3-5 days, something like that, whether it's time-restricted feeding or what most people think of as intermittent fasting, where you eat all your food in a 6 or 8 hour window, or whether it's just a few days a week you go to just very low calories, 400, 500 calories instead of 2,000, all of those potentially have benefits in terms of reduction of aging. All right, exercise. Cardiovascular exercise can help you live longer because they boost your mitochondria. They can increase the number of mitochondria, and those are the powerhouses of the cell. High-intensity interval training, HIIT training, definitely in multiple studies been shown to help you live longer. Here's the thing, and I've talked about this before. According to, Mayo Clinic, you want somewhere between 2.6 and 4.5 hours of exercise a week. There's a point, especially when you get to 10 hours of exercise a week, that actually can shorten your life. So you do have to be careful about overdoing it in the gym. Something to think about. I don't know how many people get to that level of exercise. Good for you if you do. If you're a marathoner or ultra marathoner, or some people are addicted to exercise, I guess. I don't know that many people that get to those kind of numbers, but I would rather err on the side of too much exercise than too little exercise. All right, we're doing a lot of longevity today. So there's a study, I think this is interesting only in that, so I've been trying these different shakes and smoothies after my workouts, sort of tweaking the ingredients to see, one, to make it taste good, but then to see get more protein and recover from workouts and some other health benefits. Well, there was a study done. Where was this? It was in Taiwan, but I don't know where the study was published. I should have printed that. But what they looked at is one of the things we know about aging is that inflammation and oxidative stress definitely play a role. We've been talking about that a lot. And so what the goal of these shakes and smoothies and snacks that these researchers looked at is, can we give ingredients that counteract that oxidative stress and inflammation through these snacks and help people live longer? So what they did, they called them plant-based antioxidant-rich smoothies and snacks. So they basically had to drink 5 of these smoothies and 3 of these snacks a week for 4 months. And each smoothie had 2 vegetables, 2 fruits, 1 serving of nuts, which gave carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and fiber, and then some other phytochemicals. The snacks were sesame seeds, which had calcium, polyunsaturated fatty acids, vitamin E, and phytochemicals. And then they did blood samples, fecal samples, and what they found is that there were huge increases. Don't get hung up on this name, but endogenous antioxidant thiol groups. Basically, big elevations in chemicals in your blood that detoxify things. Glutathione's the most famous. Big increases in glutathione, but TSH, total sulfhydryl, and protein-bound sulfhydryl, and total antioxidant capacity. So if you're going to eat smoothies, and I've got to tweak my smoothie because I do have a fruit in there, but just 1, not 2 types of fruit. I have no vegetables, no nuts, so that may have to look at adding that to my collagen peptide powder and my whey protein powder and my natural chocolate and cinnamon. I'll get into all of that some other time. But I've actually almost perfected my smoothie, by the way. But that seems to be good for decreasing inflammation and oxidative stress. So if you're going to eat a snack, try to find one more antioxidants plant-based, whether it's sesame seed snacks or these veggie fruit nut smoothies. My problem with that is it's just a pain to get all the ingredients and then make it together. But I do know people that buy all these different things, throw it in a one of these Vitamix type, and make smoothies every day. Good for you. All right. One of the things that we've talked about a little bit, both from your overall health and immune function, but now we're going to talk about it in terms of weight loss, is the importance of your gut microbiome. The bacteria, the trillions of bacteria you have in your gut that are involved in your immune function and resisting infection. They're involved in your overall health, but may be involved in your ability to lose weight. These researchers with the American Society of Microbiology at the University of Washington basically took 105 people who were in a wellness program that managed to lose 1% of their body weight every month for 6 to 12 months, which is quite an accomplishment. They wanted to know what was different about these people. And they looked at protein markers, their genes, their genetic backgrounds. They looked at cardiometabolic markers, and they looked at their gut microbiome. And what they found out is that the gut microbiome seemed to play a huge role in their ability to lose weight. In fact, they found 31 genes that were significantly more expressed in the gut microbiome of the people that lost that weight. And what they found is that these bacteria were involved in more what's called fermentative gut metabolism. So it basically lowered their inflammation and helped them lose weight. So how do you do that? And that's what I think is really interesting about this. They suggest that we need to be eating more fermented foods. And then this Harvard researchers talk about this. So what is that? Fermented foods would include cultured yogurt. It would include sauerkraut, miso, kimchi, and some types of pickles. Now, kimchi is one I've never had, but I would like to. I was telling somebody that the other day because it's really thought to be a superfood. But all of these fermented foods, very important in increasing that fermentative metabolism and homeostasis of your gut microbiome to help you keep the weight off. The thing about fermented foods, according to these Harvard researchers, is they have to be naturally fermented. It has to be a natural process, not some chemical process, something that increases the amount of probiotics. So the way they suggest, one, the label should say naturally fermented, or when you open it, you should see bubbles. That tells you that there's live microorganisms in it. Another way they suggest you can get more of a healthier microbiome would be to eat more dietary fiber. So that's something to think about as well. Anybody out there a fan of sauerkraut or kimchi or kefir or even cultured yogurt? That's something I want to try, just 2 or 3 times a week. We'll see. I don't know how it goes necessarily. I'm curious what premier protein shakes are, Robert. I'll maybe later at the end of the show I'll talk about my protein shakes, but very good. Speaking of something you could consider putting in your shake, let's talk about bananas. So one of the things, we've talked about the gut microbiome, but a fair amount of the population deals with various forms of inflammatory bowel disease, whether it's Crohn's disease or celiac or irritable bowel, something like that. Even colon cancer or risk of colon cancer. And we do know that the more ultra-processed foods you eat earlier in life, the more likely you are to develop one of those inflammatory bowel diseases or colorectal cancer. Now, what's interesting is bananas might help fend that off. Bananas are a prebiotic, apparently. Not apparently, it is, that provide fiber and starch. But here's the thing. Bananas, and I've heard a study, I don't have it here, but I should have looked this up. I just came straight from clinic, so I didn't have a chance to look it up. But I'm pretty sure that this is specifically bananas that are more on the green side, more than the ones that have already turned brown. But I may be wrong about that. But bananas are high in butyrate or butyric acid. It's a fatty acid found in the gut that is associated with lower abdominal discomfort with things like irritable bowel syndrome. It also lowers your risk of developing colon cancer. So if you're looking to make that plant-based antioxidant smoothie and you need 2 fruits, maybe a banana is one of those. All right. We talk about things that make you age faster all the time. Not exercising, eating just terrible ultra-processed foods and a horrible diet, being sedentary, smoking. Well, looks like there is a drink that you consume that might make you age faster. Anybody want to take a guess at what drink that would be that would make you age faster? I'll come back to that. Kimchi is a side dish with meals. I'm going to give it a try, either at Whole Foods or Trader Joe's. The next time I go, I may get some. I'm curious to try it, and I'll get back to you on how it goes. But the worst drink for you, somebody says alcohol. It is not alcohol, even though I am skeptical of all those people that say that red wine helps them live longer. Even the Blue Zones book says that. I think that is starting to be debunked a little bit. No, it is not. And those of you that watch this show a lot probably know where I'm headed with this. When it comes to aging, a new study published in the American Journal of Public Health says that there is absolutely nothing worse than sugar-sweetened soda and soft drinks. Study of just over 5,300 adults in the United States. The study was done at UCSF, University of California, San Francisco. Individuals who drank more sugar-sweetened drinks had shorter telomeres. Remember, those are the caps on the end of the DNA. When those caps get shorter, the cells are less able to divide and recover from damage. You age faster. So the people that drank more of those had shorter telomeres. Here's how bad it gets. This number just blows my mind. If you drink a 20-ounce serving, basically a large Coke, a large Pepsi, whatever, 20-ounce serving of a sugar-sweetened soda once a day, that equals 4.6 additional years of aging. It puts almost 5 years on your life. That just blows my mind. It shortens your telomeres as much as cigarette smoking does. There's just no good reason to drink those drinks for all kinds of reasons. Current Nutrition reports another study. If you drink sugar-sweetened beverages like soda, soft drinks, depending on what part of the country you live in, pop in some parts of the world, it changes your gut bacteria, causes more inflammation, more oxidative stress. Again, all things linked to aging and premature aging. So, you know I'm not big on ultra-processed foods. Try to give up the soft drinks as well. All right, if you can't tell, I am dealing with a cold. I've been dealing with a cold 3 or 4 days, and I am struggling to shake it. It's worse earlier in the morning, but I'm still congested. So I have now something that I might try to get over that. And I had heard this before because I used to do before COVID, a lot of public speaking, keynote speaking at medical and business conferences. And one of my friends that's a big time speaker, she speaks all over the place all the time. And travels all over, flying planes to get to all these places. And she always said, hey, before you get on a flight, you should consider taking zinc before you get on there. And so for a while I did that, and then I just sort of forgot, especially as COVID sort of killed the public speaking and the travel world. New study out of Australia published in BMJ Open found that zinc can actually shorten respiratory tract infections like colds, flus, sinus infections, and pneumonia. They studied over 5,400 adults through 24-ish clinical trials. And what they found, both zinc lozenges, where you just basically suck on them, or a zinc nasal spray, prevents about 5 new respiratory tract infections for every 100 people per month. And it definitely, the biggest effects were it reduced your risk of severe symptoms like fever and flu-like illness. Symptoms cleared up 2 days earlier on average compared to people that didn't take it. People that take zinc when they start getting a cold or the flu tend to heal within the first week compared to people not on zinc that don't. Now, I know zinc got a lot of attention, both good and bad, during COVID. Does it help? Does it not help? But just as a general, something to kind of keep an eye on for your overall health and immune function, zinc can be particularly helpful. So study, and there's really not too much harm. I don't know. The problem with zinc is nobody really knows the exact right amounts. What's a good amount? What's too much? What's too low? Generally, the U.S. recommended daily allowances are on the low side because they want to err on the side of safety, but nobody really knows how much you can take. So I would argue 1 zinc lozenge a day, probably not a big thing. All right, I want to talk about financial stuff real quick because we're starting to get more and more evidence that our finances affect our health. There was a study by Policy Genius at the end of October that looked at who would leave their jobs if they could and what keeps them in these bad jobs. And what they found is 1/3 of employees in this country would be somewhat or very likely to quit their jobs if they didn't need that job for health insurance. In this study of 1,400 adults, if you looked at younger adults, 18 to 34, that went up to 40% that only kept their bad job because of health insurance. In fact, 1/4 of the people in the study say they would actually start their own business, except they don't want to leave their job because they're afraid of losing health insurance. Looking at new moms, study out of the University of Michigan that was published in JAMA Network Open, that's the Journal of the American Medical Association. Financial stress is especially bad for new mothers that just delivered. The financial stress was remarkably high. What they found is that 1 of 4 of them skipped doctor's visits due to the cost of the care, the doctor's visits after the delivery, the follow-ups. 60% said healthcare was unaffordable. 54% talked about the financial stress was wearing on them. And it wasn't just the cost of the visit, it's the out-of-pocket costs outside of the insurance, deductibles, co-pays for pregnancy and childbirth-related care. And the problem gets to that stress isn't just bad for your health among these new mothers. They're very often being forced to choose, all right, I'm going to pay for daily living expenses for me or my family, or I'm going to go to my doctor for follow-up. So it's something that we at least need to consider as a society and healthcare expenses to try to reduce the burden. And I know that insurance companies kind of do what they want to make money, but that's something that we need to kind of keep an eye on. Credit card debt, another area that tends to be very bad in this country. A new study, actually 2 new studies, one out of the University of Missouri says that having credit card debt causes stress and that is linked to poorer health, including joint pain, joint stiffness, my world of orthopedics, and it interferes with your daily activities. Now, what they couldn't prove is whether it's the stress of the credit card debt that causes the bad health, or was it because they don't have enough money, they don't do health treatments that would actually prevent that kind of stuff. And that makes sense, except, get this, data from the Department of Labor. People who carry consistently high levels of unsecured debt, 76% more likely to have pain that interferes with their daily life than people without that debt. Plus, that debt carries over to later in life. It's not just right now. They have worse health later in life. And here's the kicker. Even after you pay it off, the people that pay down their debt over time still 50% more likely to have pain that impedes their daily activities. So do what you can to not carry credit card debt and get it down as much as you can, but it affects your stress levels, but it also affects and your mental health, but also affects your physical health. All right, and then the last two I want to talk about, Joy says soda. I am not a fan of soda, soft drinks, whatever, pop, whatever you want to call them. Too much sugar, all sorts of chemicals you don't need, and I'm going to get all sorts of flack from the beverage companies. I wrote an article for Swimming Magazine years ago and talked about soft drinks and energy drinks not being something that high-level swimmers should drink. And somebody from the American Beverage Council or something like that, I don't remember what it was, wrote this scathing editorial, which I thought was hilarious, actually. But they're very sensitive to it. I want somebody to make the case to me that those are healthy drinks. I just don't, and don't sell me on Diet Coke and all these diet stuff. Some people make the case, nutritionists, that those are actually worse for you than the ones with sugar because of all the artificial sweeteners and the chemicals in it to make it 0 calories. All right, let's talk about men versus women at work. I think this is interesting. Maybe this is health, maybe it's not. More mental health than anything else. New study out of Harvard Business School says that women are less likely, or they're more reluctant, to ask for extensions on a deadline at work than men are. And when asked why, when they try to figure out why women seem to be less likely to ask for an extension, there seem to be two factors. One, women are worried about being judged harshly, makes sense. And two, they don't want to burden their coworkers having to pick up their slack if they meet a deadline. Now, what they found is that the women in this study typically were more stressed for time. In addition to their work, they had issues with childcare, household chores, but also women seem to be more likely to take on extra tasks to help other coworkers, which then impedes on their ability to get their own work done. This was really interesting, published in the Proceedings of National Academy of Sciences. So how do we deal with that? Well, if you are a leader in an organization, business, or wherever, maybe you could set a policy making it okay to ask for deadlines, not just women, but for men. There was another study looking at college students, and they gave them a certain amount of time to finish a paper. And in the study, 36% of the male students asked for an extension, but only 15% of the female students asked for an extension. But when they were told ahead of time that they were allowed to ask for an extension, that went away. The male students, female students equally asked for an extension. So we need to sort of remove the stigma in our work, in our schools, where it's okay for men to ask for an extension, but women not so much. All right, and then last, and I talked about this somewhere, and I don't remember who I was having this discussion with, and this is another one of those studies. When I mention it to my friends, they call BS on this. I'll be curious what you think. A new study out of the University of Arizona shows that at least at work and climbing the corporate ladder, women are just as competitive as men, and that goes across or against everything that people have assumed for years and years and years. And it makes sense. If you look at what men get paid and what women get paid for equal work, it isn't the same. This year, 2021, women earn 82 cents for every dollar earned by men in the same job. And so the thought is, well, women just aren't as competitive climbing the corporate ladder as men, and that's why they don't get paid as much. They get passed over for promotions and just bumps in their pay and things like that. So what they did, these University of Arizona researchers put men and women volunteers into situations, both competitive and non-competitive, where they could win some money. Women were much more likely to take the competitive option when they could share their winnings compared to when it was winner takes all. So if they could share it with coworkers, things like that. But equally, they were both basically equally choosing the competitive option as a way to earn a little bit more money. So they conclude, and I don't know how you do studies testing how competitive people are, but I 100% believe that women are more competitive than men. They may do it differently. Maybe it's a little quiet. Maybe it manifests differently, but I know tons of competitive women. I think it's great. I know somebody that plays video games on her Apple TV with her boyfriend and her kids, and instead of letting the kids win, she wins at all cost, no matter what, which to me says a lot more about her than about, I don't know. I'm fine with that. All right, let's see what you guys have to say about all of this. What's my thought on raw bee honey? I've been told for years it's great for immunity. Yes, it does seem to help, and it does have sugar. So if you are keto or fasting, it is going to break that. But better raw honey than all these chemicals. It does thought to help it is thought and has been shown to help with immunity, and like zinc, might help you overcome more of the symptoms than the actual infection, but the illnesses, the upper respiratory illnesses. I'm a big fan of raw honey lozenges for sore throats and things like that. I don't think the amount of honey, the amount of essentially raw sugar in one lozenge is definitely a bad thing. Joy says, wonder how the carbonation factors into the soda issue. Read that carbonation is very acidic, which is true. It takes the body a long time to recover. Even non-sugar carbonated waters are yeah, that would be an interesting thought. If the mineral waters or the carbonated waters that don't have sugar, if they would have the same effect. I suspect it's more just because we've seen so many studies about the dangers of sugar. My guess is that the soft drinks are going to be way worse than the carbonated waters. But that is an interesting thought because, it's hard to say. Joy makes her own sauerkraut. If you get a chance, share the recipe on that. I would be willing to try that once. I'm not a huge sauerkraut fan, but I don't dislike it. But I feel like it's a lot of times how it's made is where I have thoughts on that. And then back to Robert's Premier Protein Shakes. So this is what I do. This does not work for everybody else, but I do protein shakes after I lift weights because I usually lift weights in the morning and I don't want to eat a full meal, so I need some sort of protein and carbs to help my muscles recover. So I do the Collagen Peptides. I'm a big fan of Collagen Peptides, and there's only one company in the United States that has the patent or the rights to use what's called Fortigel. It's an Australian product made by a lab in Australia that's a collagen peptide. Collagen as a supplement generally is not absorbed orally well at all. So all those collagen products you're having probably aren't doing that much. But Fortigel is absorbed well, and it's been shown to be good for a number of different things, promoting cartilage thickness in your knee, and collagen is important in tendons and ligaments and muscle. So I use, the company makes it, it's a product called Collagen, G-E-N is capitalized. You can only get it from doctor's offices because you have to get it from this one company, Orthomolecular Products. You don't need a prescription. It's just they only sell it to doctor's office. My practice has that, and I love that. So a scoop of that, I use a grass-fed whey protein, and then I use a chocolate powder from Bulletproof that has collagen in it. I wish they would just sell like they used to, just their pure chocolate rather than the chocolate collagen, but so be it. It makes it taste better. I add an organic apple. I add cinnamon, a study we're going to talk about next week. Cinnamon added to coffee increases your metabolism, helps you burn fat. I do put a little coffee in that smoothie and then ice. And is there anything else? I think that's it. Oh, no. That's pretty much it. And the coffee has been shown to help you boost your muscle glycogen. You know, we used to talk about carb loading, and these people would eat tons of spaghetti the night before a race to boost their glycogen, their energy storage in their muscles. Well, the thought is if you have coffee right after you work out, that helps your muscles restore their glycogen. So that's I've sort of worked it to make it taste good, but coffee, ice, and apple, grass-fed protein powder, collagen peptide powder, and a little bit of chocolate powder tastes amazing. But I feel like after this study that I did earlier, I need to add some vegetables, maybe add a banana, maybe add some nuts. But then I have a feeling that thing's all of a sudden going to be a $7 smoothie each time. But for what that's worth, let's see if I missed anything. And Robert, he mentions his testosterone levels. I'm not giving medical advice here, but I literally just had this discussion with one of my patients 20 minutes before we started this show. We were talking about he was in his 40s, and we're going to get hormone labs on him as part of a whole panel looking at, that's not what's important. And he told me that his doctor had gotten hormone levels and his testosterone was normal. But I told him that that's almost certainly normal for your age group. And the traditional medical community says that, all right, we know testosterone drops over time, and that by 50, that low level is okay. To me, I don't understand that. Why do you want low testosterone when it's associated with reduced sex drive, grogginess after you eat, difficulty with sports and exercise performance? Why is normal not testosterone levels when you're 20 or 25? Not sky high like the bodybuilders. That's ridiculous and harmful. But we're just talking about essentially getting on the upper ranges of normal for a 50-year-old, because that's essentially what the 20 and 25-year-olds are. So, what the actual number is depends on the lab. But if you're normal, I would argue it's better to be normal for optimal health, and that's typically 20s, than what's normal for 50 and 60-year-olds. If you go to a lot of internists, family medicine doctors, especially in the traditional system, they're going to argue with that. But I will tell you that, again, if you keep it within a normal range, regularly check it, but on the upper level of normal, you will feel and perform in all sorts of ways way better. Energy, at the gym, and just going around on a daily life, you'll probably sleep better. Big, I feel pretty strongly about that if you can't tell. Joy, thank you so much. Love your talks, such great takeaways. Thanks so much for the time you take to do these. And Joy, I really appreciate that. One of the things I've been toying around with, and I've talked to a few of my friends that really I sort of consult for advice on all this kind of stuff. I am thinking about, and if you're here for a few more minutes, or you can get back to me on future shows, I am thinking about doing these daily. Like Scott Adams does a daily show, Clay Travis does a daily live stream, obviously on different topics, but I'd like to do it every day. Now, I don't know that people want to hear me talk about medical studies every day, so maybe we vary it up. Some days I do an Ask Dr. Geier where I just answer questions, talk about bone and joint injuries and everything else. And then I've got some other topics I'd like to do. So that's one of the things I'm toying around with is every day at noon. Maybe not every day it would be 30 to 45 minutes. Maybe it would be 15 minutes some days. But if that's something that interests you, reach out to me. I would love to hear it. As always, you can follow me in all kinds of places. My big one is YouTube. I feel like that's the best interaction, and honestly, the live stream almost always works there. Sometimes we have some issues, Facebook and LinkedIn. So youtube.com/Dr. David Geier, but everywhere, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, it's always DrDavidGeier. Really, really appreciate it. Please do daily talks. Yes, and the funny thing is I actually figured out my schedule in a way to do that. My office where I see patients isn't very far from here at all. It's about a 5-minute drive. So I may be able to do it. I've just got to kind of figure out the logistics of it as much as anything. But if you have thoughts on that, certainly let me know as well. Again, Unlike the last 2 Fridays, tomorrow I am not here, so there will be no Ask Dr. Geier tomorrow, but I will try to get back to that next Friday. I hope you have a wonderful weekend wherever you are, and I will see you right back here, noon Eastern time on Tuesday. You guys take care. Thanks a lot.